So Metal Gear Solid has had plenty spin-off games that were created by Konami that wasn't within Hideo Kojima's story canon of Metal Gear Solid, which would be a reinterpretation of the company's decision to make Hideo Kojima's game one of their own, which had nothing to do with the main plotline. Whilst these spin-offs wasn't received too well by some critics and fans of the Metal Gear franchise, there would be a select few of people who did appreciate Konami's take on the Metal Gear story. Some may look at Konami's decision to make these games one of arrogance and one of disrespect towards Kojima. Whilst Konami might be in the platform for Kojima to make these brilliant games, after all he is the mastermind behind such video games, you would think they would confer with Kojima. But in terms of the NES version in which Hideo Kojima despised, to quote Hideo Kojima, quote, "I had absolutely no participation in the development of the NES version. The NES version was a pitiful title developed cheaply and simply by a small team in Tokyo. That was during the bubble economy where anything and everything that was released would sell. I came across the game in a bargain bin and tried playing it, but the game design is pretty bad. There is some new gameplay that includes infiltrating a base that didn't exist in the original. However, even I, the developer of the original game, was unable to infiltrate the base even once. Furthermore, being Metal Gear, it goes without saying that Metal Gear should make an appearance at the end. However, from what I've heard due to technical difficulties in displaying the sprite of the screen, they swapped Metal Gear out for a gigantic monitor. That made me see that those who created the game had no sliver of appreciation for the players. However, even though it was an abomination, it was during the bubble economy and it sold millions overseas. That title has only soiled my reputation. Naturally, anybody creating any kind of project or story and design would be displeased if the company and development team they were working with took such an amazing creation and decided to do something with it that was not at least without conferring with you if it was fine to do. Naturally, Hideo Kojima, being the developer and the creator of such great story and franchise of Metal Gear Solid, would be displeased with these actions of Konami of not at least appreciating the art and beauty and the poeticness of this game. The original Metal Gear Solid games were designed, but they was only released in Japan and Europe for the MSX2 platform. The NES version of the game, the one more familiar to US audiences, was created by a different team at Konami. Without Kojima's involvement, it featured different level design and had script changes as well. But it still received positive reviews and was one of the first successes for the stealth espionage game genre. Whilst Konami may have a questionable stance within video games and whether they concern themselves over the consumer view, one thing is for certain that the developers at Konami are definitely skilled in what they do in terms of making such games. One can't blame Konami as a whole, as Kojima himself has worked amongst many of his colleagues within Konami that have created fantastic video games over the years. Within the realms of the corporate world, especially within video games, a lot of corporate executives that are in charge of the marketing and selling of the game don't have necessarily no interest within the passion that goes within video games that programmers and developers themselves have to put into these games. It's fair to say, as the mediator, that Konami itself we should not blame as a whole, because quite evidently it seems the rift between Kojima and Konami seems to be at a corporate level. Kojima himself would say, and I quote, "I wasn't involved with Snake's Revenge for the NES either. However, this was created by Cope development team and wasn't what I would consider a bad game. Actually, one of my juniors was working on the NES Snake Revenge and he said to me, we're making a sequel to Metal Gear. But what I really want is a true sequel made by you, Kojima-san. Is because of the request that I ended up creating Metal Gear 2 on the MSX2. If Snake's Revenge for the NES had never existed, then there would not have been an MG2 and there would never have been an MGS for the PS1. So it comes to show that even though Kojima had his rift with Konami in a certain way, the development team back at base really did care about Kojima's input. And all wasn't as bad as it seems, because even the games that Konami brought out for the NES actually did really successfully well to Western audiences. Kojima even admitted himself that thanks to Snake's Revenge, that the inspiration for Metal Gear 2 was his reason to also create Metal Gear 1. So without Konami making these games, perhaps we would have never got these classic titles we all know. So whilst most of these Konami games don't tie in with the Metal Gear story as Kojima intended, one particular game does, and it's not considered canon within the timeline of the story of Metal Gear. One game in particular, aside from Metal Gear Rising, has to be Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops. こちらスネーク、聞こえるか?
スネーク本物のスネークあなたなの
パラメディックか
Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops first made its appearance on PlayStation Portable, the handheld PSP. The console will be released first in Japan in 2004, then North America a year later, and then other countries later on within the months in September. Whilst it wasn't the first Metal Gear to be brought to handheld consoles, unlike the Game Boy Color, for anybody who bought one of those back in 1998 would have most likely had their hands on Metal Gear Ghost Babel, which I believe was one of the first Metal Gears on handheld consoles. So a lot of you MGS veterans out there are aware that a lot of these spit-off games didn't really tie in with Metal Gear Solid's story that Hideo Kojima intended. But one game in particular, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops, I believe really did. Portable Ops takes place in 1970, 6 years after Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. It follows a soldier, Naked Snake, who is forced to fight his former Fox unit after they investigate a revolt in a South American base. And within that fight, he meets Roy Campbell, a surviving member of the Green Berets team that was sent to investigate the affair.
I'll be damned. It is Snake. Or should I say, Big Boss. Are you the real deal? You know me? Are you kidding? You're a legend in the Black Ops world. It's been an honor, Snake. The name's Campbell. Roy Campbell.
So of course, Big Boss meets with Roy Campbell. Roy Campbell we know from the earlier Metal Gear games all the way to Metal Gear Solid 4, in which this ties in all the more better with actually Hideo Kojima's lore and story, because it turns out that Roy Campbell actually knows who Big Boss is, and it all the more just confirms that in Metal Gear Solid 1.
What? Big Boss? I had no idea.
There was no way you could. It happened in Zanzibar 6 years ago. Only Snake and I know the real truth of what happened.
And in the
there.
Zanzibar disturbance is where Solid Snake would be tasked to take down Big Boss and the Outer Heaven unit, along with the Metal Gear that had been designed at the time, where Colonel Campbell would be giving Snake the assistance he needs to destroy his once unit member, Naked Snake aka Big Boss, alongside the Metal Gear. But before any of this, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops would show that Campbell and Snake actually formed somewhat of a unit in order to combat Gene, because Gene was wanting to launch a nuke towards America to destroy the philosophers in order to create what he called Army's Heaven, very similar to Big Boss's Outer Heaven. So during the events of San Geronimo incident, Snake must persuade the enemy soldiers to join his ranks due to the scale of the mission.
A code name? You must be with the Americans. Are you with the Fox unit too?
I'm not with the Americans or with Fox. I'm just a soldier.
Just a soldier. Then why?
We're here to stop Fox unit from going renegade. A member of Fox named Gene betrayed the US government and stole a top-secret weapon. He plans to use that weapon and the warheads in this base as bargaining chips to negotiate with your country. But blackmail's more like it. We're here to put a stop to it. Our mission is to free the soldiers of the San Geronimo Peninsula from Gene's control and capture the traitors in the Fox unit.
Konami's Portable Ops describes a mission between Colonel Campbell and Naked Snake, giving it the full circle that it needs to describe a lore, a story, in which we can now understand how both Big Boss and Colonel had good knowledge of one another. The brilliance of this was it wasn't trying to change the story as some past games have done, but instead trying to build upon the lore of Metal Gear as a whole. At this point in time, Colonel Campbell would be on the same page of Big Boss, wanting to destroy any Metal Gear units around the world, along with shutting down crazy madmen who wish to use nuclear weapons in order to achieve their goals. Big Boss's descent into villainy would cause a separation between the two, but of course during the 1990s, Campbell served as Big Boss's vice commander in Foxhound and the superior of Solid Snake. At some point he discovered that Snake was Big Boss's son. After Big Boss was exposed as the mastermind behind Outer Heaven and was subsequently defeated by Snake, Campbell was appointed as commanding officer of Foxhound and began revising the unit's methods with his personal touch. He discarded the codename system and adopted to use the high-tech equipment such as radars and spy satellites by 1999. Following Snake's retirement, Campbell was one of the few members of Foxhound to recall the unit's days under Big Boss. When Solid Snake encountered Big Boss, Campbell told the former to put aside his personal feelings for the man who he had once been his CO, as he is just another madman. This really rounds up the story real well, as Portable Ops seemed like the missing piece, finally confirming that, as Colonel Campbell said, that Big Boss became the villain, became the madman, which describes it all the more better, because if anyone knew who Big Boss was really well, it would have been Colonel Campbell.
That's why you decided to follow Gene?
Gene told us he would build us a nation. A nation not of soldiers, but for them. We do not follow Gene out of fear. He will deliver us justice. The only thing we fear is losing that justice. That's why we follow him, not you. You'll never be able to stop him.
Notably, Gene's ideologies are very similar to that of Big Boss, where they wish to make a nation of soldiers, and where they can continue the battle to give soldiers purposes and in a place to fight where they're needed, somewhat of Metal Gear Solid 4's PMC's ideology, a war for profit, a war for reason.
Prove your loyalty as a soldier. That's what the boss told me. I still don't know what she meant. Prove your loyalty. Not to justice, not to your country, but to yourself. Does Gene truly plan to threaten the motherland? Yes.
I think it's interesting to point out too, that the guy who's playing as the Russian soldier is portrayed as the actor who plays as Kazuhira Miller in MGS5. Whilst of course that is not Kazuhira Miller, it's still refreshing to go back and play Portable Ops and hear the voice actor who plays Kaz in this game. And in the interesting world of the Metal Gear Solid community, some theories might go around that perhaps that is Kazuhira Miller, and at the time Big Boss was not aware of his identity. But the facts are, this game isn't canon, so that's not possible, and in fact Big Boss would meet Kaz 2 years prior to the Peace Walker event. And interestingly, some fans would speculate that Kojima left a subtle clue in from Portable Ops, but of course all of this being just speculation.
Unlike the patrolmen, these guys will actively, relentlessly track and hunt you down like hounds. Hounds to hunt a former foxhound. Bring it on.
At some point of the game, Snake would meet a character called Elisa, who was a young girl possessed by powerful ESP and psychic abilities. Ursula was her alternative personality. The wildly different personalities made it fairly easily for the girl to pass herself off as a pair of the twins. Each personality had different abilities and training. Her involvement in the game makes it all the more interesting, as it spans onto the lore that potentially that she might have some relation to the likes of Psycho Mantis, because Psycho Mantis himself possesses the same abilities of psychokinesis. Psycho Mantis was born in a small village in the midst of the Cold War. His mother apparently died giving birth to him, which made his father resent and hate him. The Cold War started in 1945 and ended in 1991, and during the events of Portable Ops in 1970 is when he would have been born. So it defeats the purpose of Alicia being his mother, but could definitely be one of his relatives if you want to take Portable Ops as being canon in the story. Alicia would be similar to that of Venom Snake, having herself an identity disorder between Ursula and her original self, Alicia, seemingly having one side that is good and one side that is bad.
Share with you my true trump card.
What?
Wake up, Ursula.
Elisa!
No. Ursula, don't. Snake, shoot me.
Elisa, what are you talking about?
Hurry, Snake. You have to shoot me before Ursula awakens. Shoot now!
We're not the only demons in this world. Like you, vengeance is all he has. It's man's thirst for revenge that drives the times. Just as you live because of me, he lives because of you. Show him!
Events are so similar from Metal Gear Solid 5 and to Metal Gear Solid 1. In Metal Gear Solid 5 is where Psycho Mantis shows his psychokinesis, in which he can control other objects and people. Philanthropist wasn't pilot operated, and Psycho Mantis was taking control of the machine itself. A bit similar to like how in Portable Ops, Elisa would use her psychokinesis in which she would control Metal Gear Raxor, which wasn't able to be piloted by a pilot.
How does it move like that? It's like it's not a machine at all. Elisa, stop!
Both Raxor and Salamprophis are similar in their own way. They're still somewhat in their beta stages, so they are not yet fully operational. But what's most interesting of all is the psychokinesis, in where Psycho Mantis has the ability to read minds, such as Solid Snake. Elisa has the ability to read the future, in which she explains about the Lavans en Talib, the two children of Big Boss, and the descent into villainy, in where Big Boss would establish Outer Heaven and have his own Metal Gear unit.
I'm okay. Snake. Oh, Snake. Everything is clear now. The futures we saw were one and the same. Snake, you will destroy Metal Gear. And you will create a new Metal Gear in its place. Your children, les enfants terribles. Snake, your son will bring the world to ruin. Your son will save the world.
What are you trying to say, Elisa? Elisa!
So I don't know about you guys, but when I first played Metal Gear Portable Ops, I automatically fell in love with the game. Because everything that we was familiar with the originals just felt exactly the same with this game. But at the time, little did I know that it wasn't actually directed under Hideo Kojima's masterful work, and would have been something that a different team in Konami would have worked on. This game definitely did Metal Gear Solid justice, as a lot of it was really lore-friendly and tied in with some of the backstories behind certain characters that are important to the franchise, set in an epic setting just like most Metal Gears, with a mission in where Big Boss once again is tasked to save the world. Portable Ops is one of the games that Konami really did do well and take within consideration of Kojima's story. Most of the elements within the game, within characters as well, also tied in with the franchise later down the line, chronologically speaking, ranging from Roy Campbell to the Fox unit, Paramedic, Sigget, Zero, and of course Gray Fox, Frank Yeager, or at the time in Portable Ops known as Null, the Perfect Soldier.
Take him into custody.
So, this is Null, the Perfect Soldier. What is this guy?
Why? Why do you still live?
What the hell's he talking about?
No man can meet the perfect soldier in battle and survive, but you won't die. Why?
These moves. I know these moves. It was in Mozambique.
Frank Yeager, being a child soldier from the guerrillas in the Mozambican War of Independence, would be saved by Big Boss in 1966 and became acquainted in Mozambique after stopping him in battle, and when he placed the young boy in a rehabilitation facility believing that he would be safe. But whilst at the rehab center, Yeager was taken in by the CIA and used the latest test subject for the Perfect Soldier project. Within the importance of the Portable Ops story, it showed that how Big Boss and Frank Yeager became familiar with one another, and how their story ties in to the MXX games to show why Frank Yeager was devoted to Big Boss and one of his finest lieutenants at the time, as Big Boss appointed him to be so. With Portable Ops being the game that was seemingly filling the blanks that so many fans throughout the years were asking questions about. And during the Zanzibar disturbance, where Solid Snake would encounter Gray Fox as he was a part of Big Boss's unit, he would then tell Snake that he had supported Big Boss not because he felt indebted to the man for saving his life in the past, but because he could only find his purpose in battle despite professing a hatred for war itself. Fox admitted to providing an anonymous tip by radio with Snake, assuring the fallen soldier that Gustavo would be waiting for him, for which Fox expressed thanks. Snake then left to confront Big Boss, leaving a presumed dead Fox behind. And of course, during Solid Snake's mission, Fox began transmitting anonymous messages to him, claiming to be his #1 fan in order to help him overcome certain obstacles and traps. Solid Snake looked at Grey Fox as somewhat of a good friend, especially during the events of Shadow Moses, in which he helped Snake out on the majority of his mission.
He spoke a little German, so his enemies called him Frank Jaeger, the Frank Hunter.
Frank Jaeger. My name.
Don't do this. The strong arms, allies who will help you, are somewhere else.
No. I am the perfect soldier. Where I exist, there are no other soldiers. So I don't need a name. I am Null. And when you're dead, I can go back to being Null. I remember now, Big Boss. Even then, you were the one who stopped me. I was raised by adults to be a tool of war. But you defeated me. Watched over me.
I'm sorry. I thought you'd have been safe at the rehab facility. I had no idea they'd subject you to this. It had to be the philosophers.
It's okay, Big Boss. You're always there to save me. You helped me fill the void inside.
Let's get going. It's time to blow this place.
The brilliance of Portable Ops, aside from filling in the gaps of the story, is the fact that it has its own element to expand on it, such as talking about the old unit that Snake once upon a time ago trained alongside with when Zero opened up the unit Fox, in which he'd find up against his own formidable mercenary units, in which he was once friends with, he'd now find himself up against. Considering this game was on a handheld device, PlayStation Portable, like its successor, Peace Walker, this game really did hold up nicely, as in my opinion being one of the greatest stories within the franchise that is exactly what Metal Gear Solid needed. And without all the other spin-offs within the franchise, Konami really did master this one, and where it deserves its place to be canon amongst the rest. But something clearly changed within Konami Studios, where it seemed the great work in which they was making to make games such as Portable Ops, Konami's stance within creativity and passion was no longer a thing, and it almost seemed to be about corporate greed, and instead of creating something new that ties in with the story, they would take the game and use it in a way to profit and make money from, such as Metal Gear Solid Survive. One of the biggest hot-button issues for the fans of Metal Gear series in the status of Metal Gear Solid, Portable Ops, and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance in terms of the overall canon, despite the fact that neither game was directed by series creator Hideo Kojima, they were initially developed with the intention of taking place within the same timeline as the 8 games that were directed by Kojima. The fans with their desire to see the series lore expanded, accept these games as a part of overall storyline of Metal Gear Saga. This idea has become so widely accepted, and many fans will argue that Kojima said that Portable Ops or Rising is canonical. But has Kojima said that though? With Portable Ops, the game was indeed announced as the missing link in the Metal Gear saga, and the prerequisite for understanding the story of Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots. As it turned out, all of the Guns of the Patriots did link back to the Portable Ops, was to show few stills in Big Mama and Liquid Ocelot's Microsoft PowerPoint presentations disguised as cutscenes. With the release of Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, fans begin to question whether or not Kojima still considers the San Geronimo incident as part of the saga. And in 2014 interview, it appeared that Kojima had finally settled the issue once and for all. And to quote Hideo Kojima, "That is a very difficult question for Portable Ops. I was a producer, so of course I saw the planning. I went through all the game, but I didn't write the story myself, so some of the details are a bit off. So I would put it, when you dive into the details, they are several small things that don't seem to be according to the overall Metal Gear saga. That seemed to be outside of this world. So to put it in a way, I guess the main story of Portable Ops is a part of the saga, is a part of the official Metal Gear timeline, while some of the small details that are in Portable Ops are outside the saga, not part of the main timeline of the game." End quote. Some people of the MGS community argue that Peace Walker isn't numbered but yet is still canon. However, Kojima sees Peace Walker as being a numbered entry in every way despite it not being numbered, to the point where he originally intended it to be a numbered entry. And to quote Hideo Kojima, "Since Peace Walker is on PSP, I did not officially number it, but with the game design story, number of staff and budget, you can say that it is a big project. It would have been number 5, it's not a side story or a spin-off, it's not like Portable Ops or Acid." Yet again we see Kojima using spin-off as a synonym for non-canon, when referring to Metal Gear Acid, though at this point he considered Portable Ops to be a side story. The myth that Kojima confirmed Portable Ops and Rising as a canonical ironically comes from his statements concerning his saga. And to quote Hideo Kojima, "So to put it this way, I guess the main story of Portable Ops is a part of the saga, is a part of the official Metal Gear timeline." If Kojima merely saying that Portable Ops and Rising are related to the saga is enough to prove that these games are canonical, then by that same logic, Kojima excluding those games when listing all of the games and that is he considers the Metal Gear saga is more than enough to prove that those games are not canonical to him. Clearly Kojima's emphasis was on how he divides a Hideo Kojima's games from the games that only he produced, and that Rising is a parallel story because it doesn't reflect his idea for what happens after the guns of the Patriots. So it's going to be up for debate and who the fans decide that really was in the right or wrong in the entire situation, but one can't deny the great legacy in both Konami and Kojima have put together to make a fantastic, awesome franchise become what it is. Because without Konami, it would have been possible to make these games. But also without Kojima, the story of Metal Gear would have never happened in the first place. And to speak on this matter metaphorically, you could say it was like a marriage that started well at first, but then after a while, that shit really needed a divorce. But with Kojima, wishing that he would have signed a prenup, because Konami being like the woman in the relationship of the marriage, would take everything that Kojima would own, leaving Kojima without his own creation. But in all fairness, I think Kojima had had enough at this point in terms of making any more Metal Gear games, and he wanted to move on to something new. But despite the disagreement between the two, and me being on the side of Hideo Kojima more than Konami, especially with some of the games they have made such as Metal Gear Acid, that were complete trash in my opinion, Portable Ops on the other hand really is a special game that Konami did do really well. So aside from the story, even the gameplay itself was really good, and some of the boss battles were actually quite unique and memorable in their own way. The controls in itself were just like playing Metal Gear Solid 3, of course with not all the added features in which it had with the cure menu and the outfit bonuses to change your outfits, but it was pretty cool because you had the menu system in where you could choose different soldiers to play in certain missions like you could in Peace Walker. But the boss battles in themselves were all unique and different in their own way. Of course, it was a really cool idea too as well that we got to fight Gray Fox with Big Boss, and given at this point he was a superior soldier, it was cool to be able to take him on without having to fight him with all his cybergenetic enhancements, which makes the fight with him in Metal Gear Solid 1 all the more impressive on Solid Snake's part. And of course, just the overall and general gameplay for PlayStation Portable at the time, I found myself playing this game more than once. How could we forget Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops Online, especially Portable Ops Plus, which allowed you to have more array of characters to choose from. This for me was so addictive that I actually spent nearly an entire year off of school just to play it. Yeah, it looks like education had to take a back seat. I was learning more playing this game than I was at school, guys. But what was more fun about this game was the fact that it was Metal Gear Online, but now it was portable. You could take this online fun feature anywhere you go, on any bus, train, transport you can think of. If you could connect your ass to any kind of Wi-Fi, you was good to go. Portable Ops was so addictive online, you could find yourself getting soldiers that were really high rank. And sometimes they were super rare to get hold of, so when you had a squadron for your online gaming, you had to be careful that you didn't die too many times, otherwise you would lose them. And the shoot-offs were so fun, where you had to move side to side with the directional buttons, hoping that one of you might land a headshot to take the win. If you guys have made it this far, I just want to give you a big thank you for sticking along. Well, I thought I'd save the best till last, in what I believe makes Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops all the more canon, and why it could prove that Konami might have had more of an influence in Metal Gear Solid 5, with only the biggest antagonist in the Metal Gear Solid game that's been in practically all of them. I'm talking about Ocelot, in this particular scene that I'm going to show you that will confirm that perhaps Portable Ops is more canon than we think.
Impressive. I Never imagined they'd have a facility like this right underneath the CIA.
I'm heading for the shelter as soon as I can, but I can't leave these documents here.
Documents? Related to the philosophers?
Yes, a list of members, along with data, locations of portions of the legacy stashed around the world. So long as we have these, even if the United States does perish in an atomic storm, the philosophers will be born again.
Splendid. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
What the hell are you doing? You're not planning to betray the philosophers, are you?
Betray? No, I'm not going to betray them. I'm going to end them. Then we'll take back what you stole from us. We will carry on the spirit of the true patriot.
The true patriot?
It's all part of our plan to make the world she envisioned a reality. And so, I've come for the other half of the legacy.
Our objective was to fulfill the boss's dying wish, to make the world one. And to do it, Zero used the Philosopher's Legacy, the secret war fund you obtained during Operation Snake Eater. This organization would go on to become Cypher. I, on the other hand, was left with the problem. You only recovered half of the legacy. I had to locate the other half myself. When I found the funds, I passed them on to Zero, just as you wanted. I still trusted him in those days. We thought what he was doing was the boss's will, until he started that one project. Les enfants terribles, Zero called it. You parted ways, as did Eva, leaving only Anderson and Clark still with him. I maintained limited contact, although truth be told, we were just keeping tabs on one another. The reason was always you. After you returned to the Army and created Foxhound, you left America. For a time, even I'd lost track of you. I'd imagine Zero did too. You always were the best when it came to hide and seek.
Now, Snake.
I don't know, but I've realized something.
What's that?
I'm not living unless I'm in battle, so I have to find my own reason to fight. I have to pass on what's been handed down to me.
Take care, Snake. We'll meet again someday.
So interestingly, Metal Gear Solid 5 with the cassette tape, when Ocelot speaks to Big Boss, pretty much confirms that Portable Ops may as well be canon, because given on the scene that I showed you earlier on, Ocelot was to retrieve a part of the Philosopher's Legacy, which is an amass of funds in order to be able to create this army, this outer heaven, to continue the boss's will. At the time, Big Boss entrusted Ocelot to give Zero half of the legacy in order to fulfill the boss's will. Of course, their rift would ensue because of the L'Avance-en-Terre project, which would cause a separation between Big Boss and Zero. It's fair to say out of all the Metal Gears that Konami have done in terms of spin-offs, Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops may as well be branded as being a main game. And for anybody who hasn't played this game, I highly recommend that you go and play it. If you played Metal Gear Solid 3, I would definitely boot this one up and play it afterwards, because it's absolutely exceptional with the storytelling that fits in the pieces of the puzzle and to finally give us the answers for the questions that we've been asking. It's also worth pointing out too, before I end this video, that at the end of the game, there's a conversation call between Ocelot and Major Zero, in where Ocelot tells him that he's retrieved the Philosopher's Legacy and that he wishes Big Boss to join the new established Patriots they wish to create, alongside gathering the battle data from Grey Fox Frankie Yeager to retrieve his body and make what he would become in Metal Gear Solid 1 as the cyborg ninja.
And now I've got the legacy. Is that all part of your script too? Using him in the Fox unit like that. Only you could have pulled it off. But you won't be using me anymore. Battle data. From the Perfect Soldier. Genes. Genome? I see. Intriguing. I'll help you with the project. But on one condition. I want him to join us. Yes, Big Boss. So that we can become the Patriots.